Not too long ago we checked out the Vivo V30, but there's a Pro version. And there are some differences that matter. One of them, it has the size collaboration. Let's dive into the camera experience of this Vivo V30 Pro. But before we begin, let's quickly look at the specifications. For the display, it's a 6.78 inch display and it's AMOLED with of course 120Hz and a max brightness of 2800. When it comes to RAM, you have from 8 to 12 GB of RAM, and of course the CPU is a Dimensity 8200. For memory, it's from 256 GB all the way up to 512 GB. Now this is the part that matters for us, it's the camera setup. We get a 50 megapixel main sensor with a 1.9 aperture and a 1/149 inch sensor size. Of course, it does have optical image stabilization. You get a 50 megapixel telephoto, which is a 2x zoom, and a 50 megapixel ultra wide with an f-stop of 2.0 and a 1/276 inch sensor size. Video recording up to 4K and 60 frames per second, and when it comes to the front facing camera, again a 50 megapixel sensor with an f-stop of 2.0. Also video recording at 4K and 60 frames per second. In terms of battery, it's a 5000 mAh battery and you get a 80 watt charger included with the box as well. How it should be. So again we are in Antwerp because of course it's a beautiful location for photography. Starting outside, something worth noting for me, especially outside, is that between all the sensors the collaboration is done well. Meaning if you shoot with the main sensor, the ultra wide or the telephoto, colors have a similar approach and look as well as contrast, and for the price that is excellent. In general of course it is Vivo, and while the contrast is good in terms of colors and brightness, it does shoot a little bit more with a saturation and a little bit less contrast. This is done by default. However, if you change it to the more size natural or textured, I will say that the shots do look better in my own opinion. In Antwerp though, all these shots are taken with size natural. And images coming from the main sensor are actually really solid. This includes inside, and while it does not have a special chip like the flagship does, the processing and the dynamic range has been solid and really reliable to me. If I would give a little bit of a knock, I would say inside the ultra wide, there you can notice it's the lesser sensor compared to the main. The images are a bit flatter, processing isn't as nice, and also the images are a bit brighter than what it really is. Same goes for the contrast. The zoom, if you go to 2x, actually looks really respectable inside as well. So here I would say the zoom probably is a little bit of a better sensor, or something is just better in terms of processing there. And of course you can also play around with styles, and I would always advise to do so because it gives a unique perspective to something that you're shooting. I love for instance this new film, giving a really grainy look on purpose, unlike Samsung that doesn't do it on purpose but still has it. And the old style feels really good to it. And of course you can't go wrong with black and white. Alright, on to a different location. This time it's a church with a really nice interior. Now this is a stunning place. Ready for the views? What we also have to discuss is the RO light. Now this RO light gives a softer approach in terms of light. When it comes to a LED light, it's quite harsh because it is coming from a small single point. Therefore in the picture itself you will also see that. When it comes to the RO light, it has a larger area, spreading the light a little bit more, and therefore you get a different result in terms of light in general. I will showcase some differences between that. But what it means is that, for instance, in portraits it gives a more balanced light, but also things like close-up from flowers. That allows a better balanced light. So now we go to low light situations. Again, Vivo does a pretty solid job if you want to have a lot in the shot there. It is a bit of a brighter approach, less contrasty, which granted isn't my preference when it comes to the low light photography. And also when we talk about low light photography in general, it should be a bit more contrasty. It should give off that feel of night. And here I think Vivo is lacking a little bit. I know that some people really like it, but again, this is not my preference to have a shot that is quite bright. But it does do a good job overall in terms of low light performance, especially if you want that kind of approach with some solid dynamic range. Though around the edges it can have a little bit more grain depending on the situations. And the Ultra without a doubt shows that it's not close or on par with the main sensor here as well. Especially with some shots you can definitely tell there's more grain around the edges.
Okay, 30 frames per second again. Definitely there's a big difference in approach. Like for instance, look at that sound difference already. Oops. And much brighter, at least on the phone itself. On the Pro. Just as an ending for 4K 30 frames per second. We can record to 4K 30 frames per second with auto wide as well, where you cannot with the V30. The V30 Pro does allow that.
Either way, at the end the Vivo V30 Pro is quite an acceptable device. I think the pictures from them are pretty good. Yes, there are some cases where you can tell you're not dealing with a flagship, but this isn't a flagship, this is a mid-range, and therefore you should expect it to perform as such. What I also really like is that you get triple 50 megapixel setup on the back itself, 4K 60 frames for all sensors, including the front-facing camera. Well, I don't use it that much, other people might, and therefore I think it's a good thing that they're finally having that 4K 60 frames on the front-facing camera. Overall, the camera experience has been good, but there are some things that I miss. For instance, long exposure mode. I really want that, especially because Vivo is really good at that. Having those long exposure shots is one of the best when it comes to those kind of situations. iQOO and Vivo, they do the best, and it's not even close. Either way, the Vivo V30, what do you think about it? What do you think of the camera capabilities? And of course, let me know if you want to see a comparison with the smaller version, which is technically the same version, but it doesn't have, of course, that size collaboration, and it doesn't have that triple camera setup that you do get on this Vivo V30 Pro. So let me know if you want to see a comparison between the Vivo V30 and the V30 Pro. Either way, have a good one, and talk to you guys in the next.